I'm going to go into something fringe, Jesus and, a little bit of quantum physics. I'm not a quantum physics expert, right? But um, assuming that there is truth that the amount of outcomes of the universe, potential outcomes of reality, is what I'll say, is based off of the total amount of particles in the universe, which was estimated to be 10 to the 89th power. And that outcome is typically based off does or doesn't happen. And that, so it's something like 2 to the 10th to the 89th power is the total amount of outcomes. And thinking that if you consider the origin point of the universe to be universe alpha, we'll call it, that universe and splits into a certain amount of potential variations of that universe, right? Um, and then if you follow those potential universes 10 million years down the line, or whatever, right? Pick an arbitrary number. And you say that what's happening now is a continuation of that arbitrary number based off of origin point alpha. That means that the future and the past have convergence points based off of the possibilities of reality. I started out as a Christian, and what got me into being more philosophical and deep thinking was, what is a sin? What makes a sin a sin? What is good? What is bad? Right? And I refuse to think that God is an entity that makes rules for no reason. That just doesn't make sense to me. So I believe that God is much like a very, very, very super intelligent entity that we cannot conceive what that processing is in the same way we wouldn't be able to conceive what a super ultra intelligent AI would be. Through my ponderings, I've come to the conclusion that sin is essentially anything that is harmful, right? And that sin means to miss the mark. And the mark is to be as good as a human being as you can be. That we should all pursue enlightenment and service and selflessness. That the sin in the world, the sinful world, is essentially a deviation from the intended state of the world, which is a harmonious and balanced and loving world. And the goal is to return to that state of the world. So, how did Jesus dying clear sin from a intellectual perspective? Like, how was it just magic? Was sin was just like this thing? To me, it's never made sense. I've never liked it thinking of it like that, right? There has to be a reason. A super intelligent entity is going to have a reason. So there has to be a reason for this event to happen. And if there's multiple different realities, does it only happen in this reality, or does it happen in every single reality? Is Jesus a focal point, a convergence point that essentially redirects whatever line that reality is on back to its intended destination, the way it was supposed to be? Not necessarily do we have, a bunch of different Jesuses, they could have a bunch of different names. They could, some could be women, whatever. But that it is a shared instance across all potential realities to direct all of those points in time to the same ending, which is a world that humans pursue enlightenment and selflessness and service. I'm not saying this is true. I'm just saying, think about it. It's interesting. It makes sense. right? It makes more sense than the magic that Jesus was a human being who was completely synced up with this divine will, the true God, right? Because I don't believe, I think the Old Testament God is, it just doesn't make sense. There's this things that Jesus teaches that don't align with that, right? But if you could consider the universe to be this aligned conscious will, this blueprint for how everything was supposed to be, this original intention, and that this Messiah person is the vessel through which this logos can redirect us back on point. And the reason that this was done is because that's how much love there was for all of us. In some ways, I think that, he didn't even really need to die the way that he died, but that because that that line had already been started, that was what was going to happen, and it was the choices of humanity that led to that, but that it was would have been completely possible for him to settle down and to have children, and only his birth was necessary for that convergence. If you go back to where when Abraham is about to sacrifice his son and God says, "Now I know you," it's a really weird thing to say, right? Because God is supposed to be this all knowing entity. But it makes sense if you look at it on a split timeline thing, and God is more so saying, "I know which one this is. By your actions here, I know which one this is. I know what actions need to be done in order to realign this point."